What's going on, guys? It is Radium Records, Hollywood, California. Yeah, cool, man. Promo, marketing, bam, bam, bam. I'm in the studio right now and I'm mixing. I'm actually working on the session and it's a reggaeton session. So drums, reggaeton vibes, basses, all Spanish. You know, it's going to be fun, man. Like, I'm excited to get into it. I'm excited to kind of share some techniques with you guys, show you my drum mix bus, show you how I get my drums to hit, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so let's go. Let's get right into it. Let's get into Logic Pro. So the session itself is, you know, I've been kind of making it look prettier as I go. But for the most part, when I mix, I just go right in, right? So typically I just colored like the drums here. So I'm like, I just want these drums colored because that's what I'm focusing on, right? And I'll set up the drums and I'll start getting the drums to sound good and start to hit and all that good stuff. And then I'll start bringing in the vocals. But let's play a little snippet of this so you guys can kind of hear the vibes of the reggaeton. And this is from Christian Castro, good friend of mine, the homie. And we're making 3 tracks together. We're getting a feature on this one as well. So I'm excited. You know, I love making different records and different vibes and different styles. So this will be really fun. And I'll do some production on it, vocal production, all sorts of stuff. So if you're here right now, drop a little comment, say what's up. And if you guys have questions along the way, this is mixing. This might get boring. If you don't like mixing, you don't like making records, then I highly recommend you don't play a part in this, because this may not be as fun as you think it's going to be. All right, so it's 5:21. We'll probably go for an hour, hour and a half, okay? So here we go. I'm going to play a snippet for you.
Wine about me, mommy. I love the way you move. Wine about me, mommy. Oye, bebecita, dame guay. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Oye, bebecita, tell me why. Dime por qué tú te vas y ni me dices bye. Dime qué es lo que hay. Yo te quiero ser amiga mía, mi una catrachita de la ceiba. Yo te tengo tu corona para hacerte reina. Mira ese booty, es una bumper de una Maybach. Dice que no mire, que no quiere, no despeina. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi.
Okay, so you guys can kind of get the vibe. It's very, you know, rhythm based. It's reggaeton. So we have to really stay specific to the rhythm. The first thing I usually do when I start a mix is I go in, and you can see these vocals are colored red because I actually melodined all these vocals here so far, right? And then you have all these pink ones that are not melodined yet. And you have, like, this track, for example, has nothing on it. So I'll just kind of do a little cleanup here with the pink tracks that haven't been melodined. I'm just going to turn them off, right? So I'm not using any processing power. I don't need to worry about those right now. I'm also going to mute them for a second, kind of security. Then these red ones here, I'm just going to mute them for now. You can also turn them off if you want to save processing power. And also, because I'm streaming live, I'm always down to do that, right? So let's get the drums kind of going. I've taken them through my sort of drum mix bus here. And I'll just kind of explain this to you guys so that you understand why I have all these plugins on here and everything. But let's just solo out the drums. So this is the drums and the bass typically is what I like to do. There's some hats in here. I'll grab these. And water drop effects, it's like an intro thing. So here we go. So these are kind of the drums. Let's go to the mixer. They're going to bus 15. These hats are going out stereo out, so let's take those to bus 15. And what that is the drum mix bus. And then from the drum mix bus, which is coming in 15, which we can see up here. Just going to try and explain as much as I can as I go, guys. This bus 15 is then going to be the drum mix bus, and then that is going to bus 16, which is the drum master bus, okay? So I kind of do this, and I learned this from Jason Joshua. Just something that I learned from him, and I love like how his beats and his tracks and his mixes are with his drums. I think his drums are always so good. So I just kind of like, boink, I'm going to take that, steal it from you, and use it my own way, right? Like I have my own way of doing this as well. So the NLS buses, these are all on, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all on different settings, right? So the Spike Mic Nevo, Spike Mic Nevo. We just kind of go through those. Nothing. I'm not turning anything. Nothing's going on that at all. They're just on. And then the Pro Q3 is typically going to go in, and I'm just going to shave and carve things that I don't like. So this is all good stuff, all great, you know. And typically the NLS bus kind of adds some harmonics, so it adds like kind of fatness and stuff, which I tend to start to carve just a little bit. So I just take little tiny bits out, right? And then there's 4 more NLS buses, and then the Pro Q3 again, kind of trimming the fat, okay? I'm going to actually take this off because I think this is probably from just a different session and setting. Okay, so I'm always kind of trimming the fat at the bottom, which is, if you watch my mastering masterclass, it's literally just saving voltage, right? Yeah, straight up, Pete to heat. It's got to borrow from the greatness, make it your own, always. We got to learn off the backs of the greats, you know what I mean? That's always how it works. As well, you guys should. So here I am, just kind of like the 263 area, like I think 250 to like 400 is going to be kind of like chunky weirdness in drums a lot of the time. It takes a lot of voltage up, okay? So I'm just kind of like getting rid of anything down here, and I'm just kind of playing housekeeping here. So let's listen to the drums without these things just so you guys can hear it. So it's really like focused, it's tighter, right? And I think you really have to understand that there's a bunch of plugins on here, but the way you get to a really great mix is not by like taking all these plugins and like tweaking all sorts of plugins. A lot of the times it's like just going through the gear. Like if you had racks and racks and racks of analog gear, a lot of the times we're just making very, very small adjustments and tweaks, right? Because we want the colors. Yeah, exactly. Will knows exactly what's up because he's edited all these fucking videos of me talking about saving voltage. Save voltage, right? So that goes through here, and then it goes into the drum master bus. So the drum master bus, I have this R bass. I sometimes like will use, I'll put the sub or the bass through the drum bus, mix bus, master bus, and sometimes I won't, right? It just depends on the sound of the bass. Okay, and then I have the UAD Shadow Hills, which I just love. I'll turn this on and off, and you'll see that this is doing actually quite a bit. Right, and we don't really want a whole lot of gain reduction, you know, like I'm not slamming things. I want you guys to really understand that part of mixing, you know. I've been mixing for over 20 years. I've mixed platinum records. I've mixed multiple platinum selling artists. I've mixed stuff for billion-dollar grossing films, right? These are all the key fun things to talk about in marketing. None of that fucking matters at all if you can't make things sound good and make them sound, you know, how you want them to sound and colorful without making them sound completely over-processed. And a lot of people are just over-processing with these plugins because they don't understand engineering. Like we're engineering. Think about like a BMW or like a you know, a supercar. Like the engineering is like about millimeters. It's about, they don't measure in inches. They don't measure in feet. They measure in millimeters. They're like, look at this gap in the door. It is 0.4 millimeters, you know? Think about engineering with the MacBook Pros and Apple. It's always about millimeters and milliseconds and tiny, tiny increments. You know, that's what you're doing with mixing and mastering. It's very important that you understand that. Okay, so that's the R bass going into the Shadow Hills. The gate here is just to reduce any noise that all this stuff is going to cause, obviously, when the drums aren't hitting. And then the black box designs, I mean, this thing is like, it's brilliant, right? Like, this is amazing. So I'll show you what this is doing here. I mean, that's some pretty heavy lifting, right? So that's really important. I'm getting saturation and harmonics. If you guys don't understand pentode, triode, you don't understand like odd and even harmonics. This is all odd harmonics, by the way. A pentode and a triode are odd harmonics, which if you think about a power chord, 1, 3, 5, odd harmonics, right? It's like, bah! It's like big. So that's what this is doing. You're distorting a tube. That's all it's doing. Okay, a pentode tube or a triode tube. All right, so you got the odd harmonics there. Okay, and then we go through here and I start to clean up just a little bit more because, of course, we're trying to save voltage always. And then I also stereo widen the drums just a little bit, 105%, just 5% width there. I can also go in here and start to trim a little bit of the fat down here. I'll show you what I mean. And you can see there's also some gain staging going on, right? So I have the gain out at -2 dB, 2.2 dB, but whatever. So this is like a really important part of mixing as well, right? You're making up for gain and you're taking away and adding gain with different things. Obviously, I've added gain with so many plugins, so I want to take away gain at a certain stage. The R bass is adding gain, Shadow Hills is adding gain, the Black Box Designs is adding gain. The UAD Brainworks is starting to take away gain. Obviously, I'm only cutting. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to like boost all the time, right? Like I'm trying to shape. So after I've saturated, after I've done these things, I want to shape everything, okay? So that's kind of the idea there. And then Pro Q3, again, more shaping. Looks like 476. I don't know if this was set up for this drum kit, but let's check it out. There's a lot of boxiness in these drums, so I really don't like that. So a lot of the times with the Pro Q3, what I like to do is go into dynamic mode. If I make it dynamic and I bring up this guy here, which this is basically the gain. It's like saying like, hey, do you want to gain this down or do you want to gain it up, right? When this is like this on the dynamic EQ, it's just saying when there's too much of 409, at that threshold, I want you to dip it down a little bit. Just tuck it, you know? It's not doing much, and you'll see the meter here. And that's just like a very, very powerful setting with the Pro Q3. So if you did this, it would absolutely start to compress just that 400 area, right? And it would take it down by a certain amount of gain, which is right here, and it's you know, -2.4 dB, right? You can also see it here. You can see the crosshair. So that's like -3.5 or so, right? So what I want to do is I want to say, no. I want to keep the 400 unless the 400 becomes problematic. And if it becomes problematic, just tuck it back a little bit, which is like that boxy kind of area. So I absolutely hate that. And I absolutely love dynamic EQs. Who doesn't? You know what I mean? I'm going to tighten up this as well. I'm going to go 36 dB per octave. I'm going to really go slope on this. And because I have that sub in there, I'm going to back off a little bit and go to 18. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Pete the Heat's perfect. It's like always like cooking, man. Like I actually think a lot of the times I think about mixing as I think of it in chemistry, in food, in spices, in cooking, in palates. You know what I mean? Salty versus sweet versus sour versus umami. I think about it in cocktails, right? Like the perfect blend of a cocktail, mixing, the sugar with the tequila, with the lime, with the, you know what I mean? So I think about those things a lot. With coffee, acidity versus, having something kind of creamy and balanced, and what tones you taste in the coffee, the aftertaste, all that stuff. Yeah, can you turn this mix into a smooth bowl of pasta? You bet your ass I can, James. All right, so that's great. Love it. All right, so what I'm going to do here also is I'm going to push this 1K area out, but I'm going to use a different plugin for this. I'm going to use this new plugin that I just did a plugin of the week on, which you guys should absolutely check out, is the Eventide Split EQ. And the reason I'm going to use this plugin is because it splits between the transients and the tonal balance, okay? And what I want to do with this is the transient is green, and you can watch the plugin of the week if you want to learn more about this. But I'm going to boost the transients in just the 1K to 2K area, right? So typically like 1.2, 1.5 kind of area is really cool for me. And we're going to just kind of give that. And then I'm also going to bring it into the center, okay? So there's a pan area here. And let me see, you go to pan and you could see the transients and the tonal, and you could take the transient and you can pan it left or right, or there's this other feature where you can go stereo width. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the transients of the 1K in the center more, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. So let's listen to this. Okay, and I kind of like it up here more, up around the 3K area, 4K even, right? So I'm going to kind of get in here, and I'm going to let that tick, that beater kind of happen in the center a little bit more. And then I'll show you this as I kind of widen it and tighten it, right? See what happens. Really, really cool. So it's affecting the transients, but it's not really affecting like the tonal, like the ringing. You know what I mean? So hopefully that makes sense. And then if I want the kick drum to be a little bit punchier, I'm just going to take these transients here, not on this band 1, but on band 2, just so I can use a bell. And I'm going to go around like, 50 to 150 basically. And I'm going to find where that kick drum's really punching and where I can find that real in the chest kind of feel. And I'm just going to push that into the center as well. So we're going to go into this widening mode, and we're going to put it all kind of really tight in the center. Just real nice and punchy. Now with this bottom shelf, what I want to do is I want to use the tonal, but I don't want the transients down here because I just want it to be like, I want it to kind of sing down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to boost that up on the low sub stuff, and the same thing. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to tighten it up into the center a little bit more. Now check out what we got here, and I'll bypass it in and out. Now what we're doing is we're really like tightening the drums up. We're making them very impactful. And let's put them into the mix, because obviously soloing out drums is never going to get you, it's not going to get you very far, right? So let's make sure that these actually fit. And then also with the drum mix master bus, I always want to pull down the master bus, right? I don't want to be messing around with the balance that's happening as things go through their plugins and they get saturated, etc. So let's take this and let's kind of just pull this drum master into the mix, okay? So yeah, there you go. I mean, now you have a lot of impact in the drums. And what I'm realizing is this split EQ is doing quite a bit. It actually, like, you know, it gets pretty heavy. So we want to be really, really careful with that. And the reason is because as you tighten into the center, you're hearing a lot more of those transients and a lot more of that punch. So I'm going to start to loosen up the center just a little bit on these things, okay? And this guy, the ticky stuff in the center here, I'm going to actually tighten that a little bit on the 3, okay? So this is kind of like, it's sort of like mid-side, right? You're like widening or tightening. Let's hear what this does. Okay, so that's sounding nice to me. I really actually like that. Let's pop the vocals in and just make sure that we're not taking up that vocal space right there, right? Because we really don't want to block the vocals. So what I want to do is probably take a little bit of this 500 area out. So I'm just going to grab this band, this 4 band, and I'm going to take just not the transient, but the tonal information out around the 500 area, because I feel like the vocal needs to take up that space, right? And I feel like we'll get a lot more cut out of the vocal there. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go like right around here and just kind of tuck that back. And let's go. I'm going to loosen that, tighten that a little bit. Let's check it out.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami.
All right, so that's kind of like we're getting out of the way of the vocals in that area in the center. right? So that's a really cool feature of this plugin. For example, like if I want to really tighten up and get out of the way of the vocals in the center with the transients or with the tonal, right? But not the transients, I could take this 3 here and I could pull it down, and I can go in here and make sure that this is really tight in the center. So now the vocals can take up that right? Instead of the transients will still punch through, but the vocals can take up more of the tonal center of that 1K. So check this out.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami.
I mean, that just sounds so much better to me. And now it's like really about just kind of balancing those things, right? Making sure the vocals never get like trampled by the drums, because there's a lot of mid-range and punchy information in the drums. But without this EQ on, you notice the drums just kind of like fall to the back. And you really just can't have that happen in something like reggaeton or trap music or even R&B, right? Like even rock music, like the drums are so important in the space that they take up. And they need to be on the same plane as the vocals. So the vocals feel a little bit drowned out by the drums right now. And that's just very simple. I'm just going to tuck back the drums just a touch. And then I'm also going to start to check out the vocal bus, okay? So the vocal bus here, we have a little Pro Q3. I'm going to actually bring this 400 back up a little bit. And we'll back off this so we get a little more body. And then we also have, let me see here, the tube here, Tube Tech. So that's really smooth compression. Then we have the Pro DS, which is all good. Like that's just simple stuff. And what I want to do here is I want to just compress a little bit more and thicken the middle, which is very basic. I'm going to use a C2. And I love this compressor because it has a couple things that I just absolutely love about it. But let's put the upfront vocal on. Let's check out the sidechain here. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with the sidechain here.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi ma. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi ma. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami.
So that right there is just going to push that vocal forward. It's going to make it have star power, right? And that's just literally from some compression. Nothing crazy, right? But this part here, which I want to show you, if I turn these filters on, I'm basically saying do not compress these things, right? But I can also say compress this more. So I'll show you what I'm saying. So if there's any problematic frequencies in here, like let's say like around that 700 area, you know, gets kind of weird, we can say, hey, I want you to compress this more and look out for it. So check it out.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita
So that's like a really powerful part of this EQ. And you can easily do this with, you know, side chaining EQs into compressors and into their sidechain circuitry. So it's detecting only certain frequencies, right? So you're not compressing everything. You're not letting that 150 hertz, 250 hertz really hit the compressor and choke it down. Instead, you're just compressing the stuff you really want to compress. And the same thing here. If you want more top end and you want more sparkle here, you can literally just say, hey, don't compress the top end so much, you know? So like, let's say you want like anything, you know, 8K, 7K and above to just not be detected by the compressor. I'll show you what that sounds like. It's very different.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena.
All right, just makes that vocal like star, you know? And you want that vocal to be the star. You want it to be up front. You want it to be like, the drums can't be louder than the vocal. The drums can't be like more in front of the mix than the vocal is, you know? But we want everything to be that's really important in the mix, especially like drums and vocals in a reggaeton track. Like, come on. Like, those things have to be up front. It's very, very important. Okay, so now I have just an EQ. I have a soft, really soft kind of compressor that's just kind of smooth. And then I have a de-esser. And then I have a C2 that's compressing really hard, but only in these frequencies from, you know, 400 to about 3K. And then I'm also blending in just a little bit of the dry signal, okay? Just so you guys can see, like, it's actually parallel compression, right? So I'm not really going crazy with the compression. It just feels that way because the vocals are always like very mid-range heavy. You know, it's just the way vocals work. Okay, so another thing is we want to kind of look at this, make sure that all these are going through these buses because I noticed some of them aren't. So this is bus 20, and I'm going to make sure all my vocals are going through bus 20. So they're all getting hit with that same processing. All right, so here I'm just going to go bus 20, vocal mix bus, right? And those are all going through there now. And let's start to listen to the beginning here. Just kind of check this out.
Guaña pa' mi mami, I love the way you move. Guaña pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita, dame guay. Guantanamera, mira cómo.
Okay, so we're running into just a little bit of processing power issues because I'm streaming live, but I can actually just bypass all this stuff because I don't really want to hear this right now. But right now, what I hear in my head is I want to hear this vocal here. I want to hear it just like different. I don't want it to sound like the same as the hook melody. This intro vocal should feel kind of like filtered and interesting. You know what I mean? So let's go in and give it some vibe. And this is another plugin of the week I just did, you guys. So you should definitely tap in with this. But it's called the old. Let me see. Any old warble. Okay, so this has a really cool filter in it. And I'll show you just kind of the vibe of this. Just kind of dirt it up a little bit, and we'll go like high cut, low cut. We're just going to kind of do like a telephone kind of vibe.
Guaña pa' mi mami, I love the way you move. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami, I love the way you move. Guaña pa' mi mami. Oye, bebé. Guaña pa' mi mami, I love the way you move. Guaña pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita, también. Guaña pa' mi mami, I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebé. Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita, dame guay. Guantanamera. Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita, dame guay. Guantanamera. Mira.
So it's kind of like the start to make it feel a little bit different, a little bit vibier. And we'll just kind of check out. He's got some stuff that he's sending it to. I did not make these sends. So I definitely will kind of mess around with these as well. But I think like a long reverb, whatever he's got going on for that. It's just like a fatter. I don't think we need more fatness in this. I don't think that that's the key there. Yeah, you got like a quarter delay, eighth delay. This looks like a delay as well. A lot of delays. Long reverb. Okay, so maybe we mess around with this guy. This bus too.
Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita, dame guay. Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita. Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita. Wine pa' mi mami. I love the way you move. Wine pa' mi mami. Oye, bebecita, dame guay. Guantanamera. Mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah.
All right, starting to really, you know, it's coming together. The drums feel a little bit chunky now, you know, because of the stuff that I've done with the master bus. So I think I want to back off the chunkiness. And chunky, I mean like that low mid area, okay? So let's get in here and let's take this guy. And I don't think that this is actually even needed. If we're going to do that, we should maybe move it down, you know, so it's taking up more of like the low. So maybe this 50 to 60 area, okay? We're going to search around for it. But this area, I think it's just a little too chunky in here.
Wine pa' mi mami. Tu boni bola mami. Siquita, siquita. Tu boni bola mami. Siquita. Yeah, yeah. Wine pa' mi mami. Wine pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Tu boni bola mami. Siquita, siquita. Yeah, yeah. Wine pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Tu boni bola mami. Yeah, yeah. Wine pa' mi mami. Wine pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Tu boni bola mami. Siquita, siquita. Yeah, yeah. Wine pa' mi mami. Wine pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Tu boni bola mami. Siquita, siquita. Yeah, yeah. Wine pa' mi mami. Wine pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Tu boni bola mami. Siquita, siquita.
All right, so that's starting to really come together. I like that a lot. I think a lot of this has to do with just like balancing the drums with the vocals and making sure that that's like really tight. Now, once I get that to a tighter spot, which I think I'm pretty happy with where that's at right now, I don't want to like spend a bunch of time on that. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, I got to get the drums and the vocals perfect. You know what I mean? Like that's just not mixing to me. You have to be moving, you know, you have to be like, oh, I got to get this going. I got to get that going. And this instrumental was on, which is going to fuck me up completely. Let me hear this now.
Guantanamera. Mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena.
Yeah, I was wondering why I was getting all that boxiness. So now we're back to kind of it's sounding normal again. I was like, fuck. So I had that instrumental going with everything else, which is what was like really adding all that gain. Sorry about that, guys. I was wondering like where I screwed up. So here I'm gonna actually bring this guy back up a little bit here because I think I was trying to overcompensate for hearing that instrumental in there.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña.
Yeah, much better. Wow. I was like, what the hell's going on here? All right, so that's all good. Now what I want to do is I want to start bringing in some, I want to bring this all through some glue, which is basically, you know, starting to shift into putting this through a master bus, master chain kind of vibe. It looks like he's got something routed here. Let me make sure.
Guantanamera, como ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena.
Yeah, sounding really cool. I think the vocals can be spittier, but we'll get into that as we start to treat the master bus just a little bit, okay? So the first thing I want to put on the master bus is an EQ. I just want to throw an EQ on here just so that I can make sure that I'm not letting a lot of that that voltage through. So let's pop Pro Q3 on here and let's just trim out the fat. Very simple, and I actually go pretty dramatic here. Like you could literally go really steep on this plugin and you're not going to hear any phase shifting or weirdness. And then I'm also going to be very aware of this area here, right?
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami.
I like it because it sounds fat, you know? Like it sounds fat and full. And I love mixes that are fat and warm and full. And I hate sterile mixes. And I think people are like just fucking up mixes really bad nowadays because they're making them super sterile and they're using way too many plugins. That's doing way too much on each plugin. And they're boosting way too much of the top shitty like stuff that's in the tinny area. And I just love that warm, round kind of fat sound. I think it's going to be really cool. Yeah, trim that fat, maestro. Exactly. So that's kind of what it is. Just like kind of go in here and just trim the stuff that's like really kind of not serving the song well, and it's getting a little too chunky. But still keep it warm. Like I want the warmth. I don't want my mix to turn into this just like, you know, super sparkly top, tinny, thin kind of sounding shit, because it's not pleasing to the ears. There's a reason why we're still selling vinyl records, you know? People like that sound. And the mid-range is really, really important, so just keep it very sacred. The mid-range to me is like so sacred. And that's why like I typically use harmonic saturation and things to kind of push the mid-range rather than, you know, EQing the crap out of it. So the next thing I'm going to put on here is just something to kind of glue it all together. And that's the way I think about it. Let's do like a UAD, just because I want to see if it can take some of the load off my computer as it's streaming. We'll do the Shadow Hills or the Neve. The Neve is really good for this sort of thing. The 33609. So this guy's great. You know, you can use this guy, and you can just pop on like a bus glue or whatever, glue it together. There you go. And just kind of just give it just a touch. I don't want to like hear this so much. I just want a little glue and I want a little gain from it. Right? That's like exact opposite of what I just said. So when I see that gain reduction hitting 8 dB, I'm like, ugh. And you can hear it. It just sucks. It's like it's just fucking limiting everything, going crazy. And this is at 1.5 to 1. So let's take this, the threshold, and we'll mess with this, but we really want to probably have it, you know, pretty low. Mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Chiquita. Guantanamera. Mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita. So at this point, what I'm hearing is I don't want to just be throwing limiting and compression on the mix bus. What I want to be doing is I want to rebalance some of the gain staging. And I think that that's really, really important. And everybody needs to understand that is mixing, right? It's gain staging. So when I look at the stuff that's going to the stereo bus, right? I want to just take everything that's going stereo out here. Anything else, leave it alone. So if it says bus 20 or anything else, just don't worry about it. But I want to trim everything down. Like I want to give it like, you know, 4 or 5 dB. So here I'm at 3. I'm just going to go, okay, now I took it down 3 dB, basically. You know, it doesn't need to be perfect. Mixing is like a back and forth. Okay, so vocals, all this stuff, this is all stereo out. These are all the instruments. 3 on this one, I'm going to take it down to 0, right? So, boop, 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 right? Just gave myself a little gain staging. And then same thing on anything going over here that's going stereo out. Even effects, right? Grab it all. Grab all this stuff going to stereo out, and we're going to trim it down 3 dB. So, -3 on this, right? Perfect. Give yourself some headroom. Now you have some headroom to actually see this was going over 3.4, which is fine. Overages are fine in a 64-bit mix environment. Don't worry about that. But now let's see if our Neve can handle that, and we're not going to be smashing the crap out of everything, right? And that's just turn the threshold all the way up, and we will limit in attack. We want to go slow on the attack, 1.5, and let's check this out. See what the meters do. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Chiquita. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Okay, this compressor's not doing what I want it to do. Let's throw a manly on here, a variable mu. Kind of the same vibe, but the variable mu will kind of push the mid-range a little bit and kind of saturate as well, which I really love about the variable mu. Anybody that uses manly or anything with tube compression really understands like how important it is. Let me see here. Let's go into the manly. Variable mu. And the key to this is the input gain, okay? Just so you guys are aware of how this works. Let's just grab anything. It doesn't matter, you know, stereo bus compression. Perfect. Okay. And then recovery fast is good. Now we're going to pay attention to this dual input, and we're just going to tickle this. We don't want this to be compressing a lot. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Chiquita. Guantanamera,
catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami.
Okay, so see, when I set my compressor, I'm not really trying to get 20 dB of gain from it, right? Like, oh, it sounds good, it's louder. Like that's what you're gonna do when you're mixing, right? You're like, that sounds better, it's so much louder. That's all it is, psychoacoustics. When things are louder, we think they sound better. That's part of being human, guys. So, you know, don't let the loudness trick you. Sorry, hold on one second. So I think at this point, like what the Manly's doing for me is it's pushing the mids forward. It's giving me just a little bit more glue and a little more like, let's put it all together. It's cohesive, right? Now we're kind of going, hey, this is a mix. This isn't like the instruments playing by themselves, right? This is all about everything playing together, right? So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm letting everything play together. And if I bypass it in and out, you're just going to notice a little bit of more gain, right? You're not going to notice it like jumping. And if you notice it jumping like crazy, you need to take the output gain down. Find the sweet spot on the input where it's starting to sing, because I'll show you what the input can do. It can really distort.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami.
I mean, come on. Like it's the Manly variable mu it's a classic for a reason. Let's just say that much. All right, that's just an incredible plugin. So the next plugin I'm going to put on here is let me see here, so I don't just like start throwing plugins on. Let me just stop real quick and kind of slow down that process. I don't want you to think like, oh, what's the next plugin that would be fun to throw on there? What do I have? I need some cool shit, right? What you need to think about is listening. Like that's what mixing and mastering is all about. It's about what does the track need? And for me, what I think it needs like more sort of shape. Like I want to shape it so that it's more smiley face and the mids are nice and they're in your face and it sounds dope. And then there's dimension, you know, like with the synths being like in the back, like swimming, you know what I mean? So how do I achieve that depth? How do I achieve that kind of curve? You know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm thinking about. Right now, I still think it needs more kind of saturation and more things, more vibe. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to throw a lot of that vibe on the master bus. That means that I need to go back to the mix elements and put that into the mix elements, or even the subgroups and sub buses of the mix, right? And a lot of people want to rush to the finish line. They want to throw 15 plugins on the master bus and like tweak them and then put Isotope on there and go, yeah, there you go. That's dope. But it's like, dude, you're missing the point. You're not going in and shaping things and letting the master bus be the thing that like gives you that extra sauce, you know? Like takes something good and turns it into great, not something that's all right and turns it into pretty good, you know, because you put the master bus together. So I think in very, very, very small bites. And the next thing I want to put on here is going to be like the, here, let me see. I can't see things with all this shit in the way. The Inflator. And what I do with the Inflator is not to sit here and push everything and go crazy with it and make it sound like a finished record. What I want to do with the inflator is first turn on the band split, because this means like basically if you got really low frequencies or really high frequencies in a mix where it's kind of imbalanced, you want to split the bands into 3, okay? Rather than it all just kind of taking care of one band. The curve is basically going to make it warmer, fatter, you know, all that. I don't need that in this mix. What I need is a little bit of this effect. And I typically like it around that 20% marker just to kind of give it some juice. And this will also push things forward, but it'll give it some spit, you know? And the curve, I actually might want to like bring this down so that I can kind of use this to shape instead of an EQ. I'm using this to shape my full kind of spectrum. And then I can go back and I can tweak the mix and I can tweak the buses. So it kind of gives me an idea of like what it's going to look like as I go through the process. So let's listen to this.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so just so you guys know, these red meters, that's fine in the inflator. It just means it's clipping, and that's good. What this does is clip at 0, right? So what this is going to let you do is when clip is 0 is selected, internal processing levels are restricted to the equivalent of normal clipping. So you're basically soft clipping. So if I push this input, it's going to soft clip. Okay, so I'll show you what that sounds like.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea.
So typically on this, you want to clip on the input, but you don't necessarily want to clip on the output. Just because there's no benefit to clipping on the output of the inflator. It's not going to add any color or anything. It's not going to do you any good, right? So I'm just clipping just a little bit here, and I'll put this in and out so you can kind of hear what this is doing.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea.
So for me, it's taking the mid-range and it's pushing it forward and making the vocals even more important, right? And like you take it out and it's kind of, the vocals kind of become softer and kind of more in the back, right? And that's what I want. I want those transients to jump and I want the vocals to jump forward. And that's what like modern records just sound like, you know, it's just kind of part of the modern record process. Okay, and just make sure like you back off and you mess around with this. These peak clips, they're nothing. Don't worry about it. You're in 64-bit mix. If you got like, if you go into Logic and you go to your preferences, you go to audio, and you go here and you see high precision 64-bit summing, you don't need to fucking worry about it. Okay, you have plenty of dynamic range to let your peaks clip on a plugin. Okay, these are 64-bit plugins, which means your dynamic range is a ton. It's very many dB, way past the human hearing. Okay, so stop worrying about clipping your plugins. If it sounds good, it sounds good. So to sort of start to, you know, shape things around, I like where the vocals are. I like where the drums are. I think those things sound pretty good. I think the vocals need a little bit more spit, and I think the drums need a little bit more carving. Okay, that's kind of just where my ear hears it. The drums, something you can do on the drums before the limiter, and I want to turn this auto release on drums, or I want it to be very fast on this. You know, just because it's going to be, you know, it's going to mess you up. You can set your out ceiling as high as you want. You can set it at 0 on drums. It doesn't matter. I'm going to set it at 0.3, and we are going to put that on auto release. And I'm going to, before I hit that L1 with the limiting, I'm going to use Gullfoss on here. And what I'm going to do with Gullfoss is I'm going to use it to clean up the drum kind of chubbiness. And what Gullfoss is really, really good at is that. It's amazing at that. And I would literally have to go in with a bunch of dynamic EQs and shape the crap out of it if I wasn't going to use Gullfoss, okay? So I'm also going to let the sub-frequencies go through. So I'm using these filters, I'm pulling them in, okay? Which means I'm going to go into probably like 45, 50. And then here, I don't want that top stuff on the drums, so I'll probably go like 17 or so. And then I don't want to use this. This boost is going to give me a smiley face curve. I don't want that with my drums. I want to start to tame, and you'll see that I'll start to get some of this chunkiness out of there. You'll see right here.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami.
Like, just incredible at doing that, right? It gives the drums more separation. It gives the kick and the snare more definition and just kind of separates them more. And then I'll recover as well just to bring back anything that it's missing, which this might give it more punch. It might give it more low end. I don't know. We just have to check it out.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah.
Like, I just love that. I think it's just so good. Like, how is that plugin so fucking good? It just like blows my mind. So I'm going to open up the filter here as well, because I like that sparkly stuff on the top. That's, you know, and what's happening with the drums. Like, listen to the kick drum in and out. Like, listen to the top spit on the kick drum.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah.
Just that, you know, it's just so good. I love that. So that's what I'm going to do there on the Gullfoss. And that's just like a very simple way to get the drums to kind of sparkle, let your transients kind of, you know, breathe again and push out front and be more interesting, right? And now on the vocals. Let's go to the vocals. We're not going to use Gullfoss on the vocals. I don't typically use Gullfoss on anything that's not really like a group. That's just me. I don't like it on much because you got to be careful with Gullfoss and plugins like it, because what it does is it makes your mix sterile. It'll make your mix really sterile really quick. So let's go to bus 20, which is going to be our vocal mix bus. It's coming in here. And this is why I prefer mixing in Pro Tools, is because Logic Pro's busing system and naming schemes and all that just get really, really just gnarly. Just not fun to work with. So let's go here, vocals. If you click on this, you'll see where it's going here, right? Like, you can see the vocal mix bus. So right after the C2, what I do like to use is anything that's going to give me kind of like shimmer at the top without sounding overly EQ'd, if that makes sense. So I really like this Fresh Air plugin, and maybe it's just right now that I'm really digging it. Doesn't mean I'll always like it, but you know, I'll probably find something that I like more pretty soon here. But I'll just mess around with this. Like, you have the high and you have the high mid kind of vibe. So I think this is going to do better up here, but sometimes you get pretty sibilant right there. And then I just use this very sparingly.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas.
So you can hear right away, like, it's bringing out that sibilance, that sacalera, sacalera. Like, I don't know what he's saying, but, you know, because I don't speak Spanish that well. But right there, like, it just gets really S-y.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena.
If the computer will allow me to. Let me see here. It's hard when you start getting into these mixes where, you know, you get them from other artists and they have like a million plugins on there for no reason. Like, you're like, why do you have all this? Why do you have a million sends going and a million plugins? Like, it's pretty obvious, like, you didn't spend the time editing the vocals, right? If you have to use that many plugins. Or they were recorded really poorly and the tune was really bad. And all that other stuff, you know, you could see, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, sometimes I'll use a lot of plugins on a chain, but most of the time you don't need all that, you know, not if it's recorded right. But, you know, there you go. If it's recorded right, and most things are not recorded right nowadays. Okay, let me check it.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's brilliant for me, man. Like, I like, this plugin is just so ridiculously good. So always make sure that you use the trim button on this, because if you're adding this mid air and this high air, you're really boosting where the ear hears things the most, right? Like Fletcher Munson curve, right? So you have to trim it back so that it sits back in the mix. It can cut a lot more, but you don't need to, like just listen to the volume difference when I don't trim it down 1.5 dB, right?
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena.
Like, it really jumps out, and you got to be careful because then it starts to sound on top of the mix. And I don't want that. I just want it to sound like in the mix, but like more sparkly. That's it.
Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Yeah, yeah. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi mami. Guaña pa' mi. Mira cómo se menea. Chubo ni bola, mami. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena. Guantanamera, mira cómo ella mueve esas caderas. Una catrachita de la ceiba, ella mi morena.
I mean, that's damn good, man. That sounds hella good. Like, I'm like happy with that. That's starting to sound like a record. You know what I mean? So now the next step for this, and I'm actually out of time, or else I'd just keep going with you guys, you know, and talking my way through it. But the next step with this is that I want to start to shape the bass, the sub bass, all that stuff, and then start to place all the instruments and all these effects sort of things. Like, this bell is really, really important to the track. You know, and I feel like it's just not being represented well enough in the full mix. That, and then there's also this guitar that I think needs to come out more. And it needs a much more interesting space. Like, that just sounds cheeseball, right? And there's just a bunch of other stuff in the instruments that I'm going to start to get into now that I have the fundamental and foundation of the vocal. I still have to tune all these vocals, and we have to open up a verse, and we're going to have a feature on this with this artist named Garen, who's really dope. He's like an R&B singer, a friend of mine. He's amazing. Love him. And he's just going to kill this because it's going to sound super dope with his voice and timbre on this with the reggaeton and Spanish. So I'm excited about it. But thank you guys for tuning in, and come back. I'll always be doing as much as I can, be sharing this stuff with you guys live on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, I think like 80% of people watching the videos on our channel are not subscribed to the channel, which is kind of crazy to me. So I highly recommend you subscribe, get on the mailing list. We do live song reviews every Wednesday. I'm trying to do Wednesday and Saturday, but typically my schedule just doesn't permit. I've just been really, in it with a lot of different tracks. And I'll try to share this stuff with you as I go. These are real projects. These are real clients. These are real songs that are going to go out as real records. So it's really fun to just kind of show you guys where we're at in the process. And, any love and spreading the word and stuff, it just helps us want to share this stuff more with you guys and show you more game. That's all it is. So it's all love. Radium Records. I'm Bradley Deniston, and thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. Hope you got a lot out of it. Peace.